Pain PT. Good to see everybody out there today. Today, I have Michael Hodge here as a guest. I'm really excited to have him here. We connected in the PPDA conference in Boulder, Colorado. We were talking, and I thought it'd be great to have him on and share his wisdom and insights. So, welcome. Thank you for being here, Michael.
Hey, thank you, Jim. I mean, it was awesome meeting you in person and getting to be at that conference with so many other practitioners and seeing how we're all doing very similar things, very similar mission, but the approach can look different. And I think that can confuse people. And sometimes it can confuse someone like, hey, why do you just work with pelvic floor issues whenever supposedly it's all the same thing? And I
Yeah.
know you have more of a wide-ranging focus, but yeah, it'll be a good conversation to zero in a little bit more on the pelvic floor, urinary, sexual side, especially like the sexual dysfunction side. But yeah, thanks for having me. It's going to be a great convo.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And I feel like it's a topic, like we said, that it's not explored or put out there as often. People talk about pelvic floor, pelvic pain, but in a broad way. But I think to get into hone in on some of the issues that you see and that you help people with, I think is important. And even the audience here, there may be many people that are dealing with these things that could be helped or learn a bit. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Why don't you share a bit about yeah, maybe what you're doing and people don't know you, how you got to what you're doing now.
Yeah, I had no idea I'd be doing this work now. It's really funny. Um, I've now been working, you could say, professionally as a practitioner for about 5 years, focusing on pelvic, urinary, and sexual health. I've helped over 1,000 clients over those years with these issues specifically. But that's because I went through them myself. And that's why I do this work. I had specifically about a 5 year period of really severe chronic pelvic pain. I also had some urinary issues going on during that. I had premature ejaculation that got definitely a lot worse during that period, ED some, and even after. Basically, all the areas of that I work with people, I actually have experienced all of them myself, and that's kind of an interesting thing to go through. But I had to try so many different things to get better, as have many. And there wasn't as much information on the internet yet back in like 2013 as there is now, whenever I started dealing with some of this stuff, which is part of why I'm doing the work so that people can find info faster. Like if I can help someone get better in 3 or 6 months instead of 5 years, that's really amazing. I'm really, really grateful to be able to help. So I was really curious about how I actually improved and putting pieces together. And I actually was interviewed by Dr. Brianne Grogan, who is a holistic pelvic floor focused physical therapist that's on YouTube. And she interviewed me, and I had a success story on there. And I gave out my email address. And I'm like, look, guys, just email me if you need help, and I'll do the best I can to guide you. And guys were emailing me every week. And I was just giving them the assistance that I could. A couple of years later, it made sense to partner up with Dr. Brianne Grogan, and we actually created a system. And that's kind of what I've been doing since. I've also focused on the sexual issues side because I also went through that. Even once I recovered from the severe pelvic pain and the pelvic floor tension that was really gripping, my erections weren't as strong, and also my ejaculatory reflex was very uncontrollable. And that was very frustrating. I'm like, okay, pain's gone. I'm living life again. But wow, sexually speaking, I'm not really able to enjoy this. My wife doesn't really want to have sex with me. She actually said it's not even worth having sex with you. Like it's just gonna happen so fast, and why even do it?
Yeah,
So
that
it created, I
that
mean,
doesn't make you feel good, right? It's sort of like making the situation worse, I imagine, when you hear
oh,
something like that.
oh my gosh, salt on the wound, like really big chunks of Celtic sea salt specifically.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah. I could really imagine. No, that really does, right? It would really hurt you and just put more pressure, right, on you to try to perform or to find a way. But that pressure, I imagine, is self-fulfilling in terms of potentially making it worse for some people.
it is. And just briefly put, because I won't kind of explain my whole situation, I have podcasts and lots of things out there if people want to listen. I go in depth on all of it. And I'm writing a book right now, so it's also in there quite extensively. But when it comes to the pelvic floor dysfunction side and all of that, a lot of it had to do with personality tendencies for me, not necessarily childhood trauma or major repression of emotions. I mean, I definitely was not acutely aware of my emotions in the way that I am now. I'm like much more aware and connected to them. But I definitely was putting a lot of pressure on myself to be successful in business and with my family and, just with life in general. I was very future focused. Hilariously enough, I was actually writing a book once in 2012 called The Fast Forward Life. And I talk about this in my book. It's like the funniest example ever. And this book is about, skip the boring stuff and get to the real life that you choose. And part of this was like, why do you don't really have to go to college? You don't really have to follow the path that everyone says. And I think part of that can be a useful conversation. But it was very much like a jump right ahead to what you want, jump to the next thing, go to the next thing, go after your goals, be a goal getter more so. And that manifesto at the time seemed to rev me up. And it's like that excites you, but it also trashes your nervous system. It
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
messes with your body a lot. Um,
Sympathetically, yeah, you become sympathetically driven, right? In terms of, yeah, overstimulation. Yeah.
no, so that was a big factor. And, fearing confrontation. And I had this whole relationship dynamic going on with my wife. And they were like fearing her getting upset and not speaking out and really not living my truth because my truth in many ways wasn't respected and it didn't fit with the life that we had built. So it was like, oh, now we've already built this life and I have to be this type of person to keep it together. And I also
Mm.
don't want to get a divorce. I don't want it to fall apart. And so I was just kind of putting duct tape on my life and on myself probably all the time without realizing it. And on the sexual dysfunction side, I guess there's some similar things, but I was placing a really big importance on sexuality and like pleasing my partner and being good at it and her having an orgasm. And there was a lot of pressure on that, a lot of self-worth, I think, connected to it. Like if I'm not good at this, I'm not a man. I'm not really worthy. And honestly, I'm not really worthy of your love in the same way that I kind of think I should get it. And a
Yeah.
lot of that was wrapped up in it. And I didn't know that earlier on in my life.
Yeah, I can imagine that. I could see that the shame and like you said, what you said about what your wife told you, that's really could make a person feel very ashamed, right? And then you try to prove your worth more. But yeah, but you can get caught in that cycle. So that's a great recognition that you had. Yeah, these emotions that could come into play. Um, and like you said, to be a man, I imagine, to be especially a man and to be able to, satisfy your partner and to feel good, that's a goal. And you could be a failure basically, which is shame if you're not able to do that. So yeah, pretty powerful that you worked yourself through that. I'm interested to know. So at the time when you got through it, you didn't have a program necessarily, right? You kind of just were figuring this out yourself, or how did you come about your
Yeah.
success?
Yeah, I mean, there were different phases depending on it's honestly all interconnected. And for all who are listening, whether we're talking about premature ejaculation or ED or hard flaccid or, pelvic floor dysfunction, the root causes and how they affect the brain and the nervous system and how that affects your physiology is essentially the same. I didn't really know that even whenever I was like healing for my what was called CPPS, chronic pelvic pain syndrome. In my mind, that was really like a totally different thing from Prejac or ED. And I was like, that's more like psychological stuff that's showing up in my body, or there's something I just don't understand. Um, but long story short, we can look at different areas. When it comes to the sexual dysfunction side, at that stage, I had already done a lot of inner work too. Like I was learning more about myself. I was connecting more to my emotions. I was living in a way that was a lot more relaxed. My nervous system was more balanced. So all that mattered, not working constantly, actually taking time out to meditate, to do yoga, to be in nature. And when it came to the sexual side, though, it had a lot to do with authenticity and actually being my true self there was
Mm.
all this constriction and constraint. And the thing is, this is just a little example. I was afraid to dance, okay? If you're afraid to dance, your body is so tense because you're fearing judgment. Your body is your mind actually. Your mind is forcing against the present moment, which may be like so much joy, really great music, people dancing around you, but out of a fear of being judged and everything like that. So if you're feeling that type of constriction in your life, it's going to show up in the bedroom as well. So what I was having to do is look at, okay, where am I not free in my life? Outside of myself. Where I'm not free, why am I not free? What am I afraid of? And so it was a process of noticing where I was constricted and starting to actually walk towards the constriction, even though it was really uncomfortable. That also frees up your energy flow, or however you want to describe it, which does show up better sexually too. And just like taking the performance side out of off the table is huge. Like it doesn't actually matter anymore what happens. This is about presence, pleasure, and connection. That's what this is.
Yeah.
And then if you're not able to connect or be present, well, you have deeper relationship issues too that are not even related to sex.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so, I imagine it's so interplayed, and it's, listening to this, it's fascinating really to think about it, because we all are in relationships, we've been in relationships, and you're right. It goes much deeper than that. A reflection of ourself, right? Reflection of the other person, a relationship, nervous system state, stress levels. Yeah, so many things, I imagine. So that's amazing. So you work through this yourself, and maybe and now you're doing this program. You help other people with another physical therapist, which is awesome. Yeah, maybe share with the audience a bit more about what you're doing. Like, what are some of the things that your approach takes towards these conditions?
Yeah, definitely. Um, I use something called the root cause release approach, or the root cause release way. Whether I'm helping someone with sexual, I have two different paths essentially. There's a path called vigor. Vigor is for people who are working on their sexual strength, the ED, the Prejac side, and then overcome. Overcome is more pelvic floor tension, pain, urinary issues. They have very similar fundamentals, but some of the specific practices are different. And I'll mention why in a moment. But the overarching approach is what I call, it's like 80% root cause, 20% the practices. So
Mm,
like if you're dealing with Prejac, a lot of people go straight to how can I fix this with physical practices? Kegels, reverse Kegels. I could do edging. I can do this specific masturbation practice. I can try to find supplements. I can change my chemistry, the chemistry of my body. Everything possible that is like enacting a plan
like a
and not having
technique,
to
a
touch.
practice, or yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's more like mechanical though.
Yes.
What I found is that people don't see a whole lot of change with that. And the reason why is that those root causes, the word I use, they're underlying stressors or perceived threats or constricted pressure that's inside of the mind body system. And that's affecting the brain and the nervous system to produce tension in the body or genital or urinary dysfunction or headaches, or I know other things are possible as well. And we do have that neural circuitry that gets wired and fired over and over and over again. So, with the case of someone who's been dealing with Prejac for a long time, look, on the one hand, there can be the neural circuitry from masturbation practices, watching porn, different things that have actually wired and fired your system to ejaculate faster or in a certain way with certain stimuli. On the other hand, there's the consideration of the amount of pressure and importance you place on this. Importance is really important,
Important.
for
Yeah.
lack of a word, to realize. And so yeah, in the program, the path that I guide people through, it's first of all relaxing the nervous system and like chilling out. Because if you're like, oh my God, this is so bad, like this just happened last week, or I gotta fix this, I gotta fix this. We don't want to be in that state. So how can we relax the nervous system? Knowing that there's nothing wrong with your body is a big help. as you know in your work, Jim. So we help people to go to their doctor if they haven't yet, get a medical checkup if they need it. Realize, hey, there's nothing physically wrong. Because if there is, maybe you do need some biomedical intervention. That is possible, okay? So it could happen. It's a very small percentage of my clients that have something structural happening, like a pathological disease, cancer, a very recent tissue injury.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's typically neurophysiologic or neuroplastic. So the brain is creating it. But at least get yourself checked out. Because then you can be like, okay, I know that there's nothing seriously wrong with my body. There's no damage. And physiologically, I'm fine. So, like someone with Prejac or ED, like they're able to get an erection right now. Their physical body, their penis, the pelvic floor musculature, their cardiovascular system is actually able to do it. It's fascinating, right? Um, they're able to last, 10 plus minutes and not ejaculate. The physiology is checked out, actually. I think that's really important to realize that your
Yeah.
body is capable of doing this.
Yes, because you think something's wrong with you, right? Something's wrong with my system. Absolutely. Same, right, with the work I do with these conditions that we definitely want to rule out the body and get that confidence, and then we can move towards the mind and the nervous system and the brain. And what you said earlier about, getting people to relax, I think that's like sounds really important. It is important, right? But just with the sexual system in terms of right having an erection, being more traditionally seen as more parasympathetic, right? Nervous system versus ejaculation, more sympathetic. So I can imagine, yeah, getting people to relax with lots of different reasons, right? But going more towards the root cause is obviously always a good idea. So as you work towards that, what are some of the things that you're looking for, like in people? Like, what are some of the common things that you might see in people?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so we start with the relaxation side with different practices, with the education, just knowing there's really nothing wrong. And also making a few changes already, like stop watching porn. It's not benefiting you in any way. Change the way you're masturbating. I have conscious masturbation practices built into my program on purpose because you really need to go 10, 15 plus minutes before you ejaculate. And also, you don't need to ejaculate every single time you have a sexual experience. It's very beneficial for men to start to do that, to decouple ejaculation from sex.
Yeah,
It's coupled for almost for like most men on the planet. And what it's starting to do is change your experience with sexual energy. And you're starting to be like, wow, I can actually feel aroused without coming. I can actually feel aroused and go longer and have different experiences, not just like moving my hand the same way over and over again, looking at a screen. I can actually touch different parts of my body. And so in our conscious masturbation practices, we have breath work built in. We have sound play. So you make
mm,
sounds and you have more expression vocally. We have different movements with your pelvic floor, your anus. So and we also have some visualization. So we use different tactics, and that's just in the conscious masturbation practice.
yeah,
So we're already starting to give them some tools. It's like, look, I know you have sexual energy. I know that you get aroused. Instead of it being a reaction to feeling lonely, instead of it being an avoidance of an emotion, which a lot of people masturbate, watch porn, etc., because they're avoiding a certain feeling.
yeah.
On
They
the
want to
other
feel
hand, there
better.
are, oh, go ahead.
I say they want to feel good, right? They want to get that good feeling in their body, dopamine. Yeah,
Totally. Totally. And look, you don't have to be heroic about it, right? And change instantly and be like, oh, I'm stoic and everything. But at least have an awareness. It's like, oh wow, I see what's happening. I see what's happening. I'm going for this right now. I'm doing this thing. Notice how you were feeling right before you started to. And that's with any addiction, whether, we don't have to, you can use the word addiction or not, but that's with any kind of unconscious habit pattern. Now, someone might think, well, am I never going to have sex? Am I never going to masturbate? No, on the contrary, like we have natural sexual energy patterns. We have cycles that flow through us. And you'll actually feel this very natural, more like playful, in the moment, kind of thoughtless pull towards pleasure, whether it be self pleasure or the partner. And that's really good. That's more where we're going towards. So we're starting to like retrain the brain and the body around sex. And yeah, then we're going to start like looking into the root causes a little more is the next phase. And that's I call it reveal, if you want to use that word, revealing the root causes, looking inside the self for what's really going on. And it kind of depends on the person. Like, look, if you're dealing with someone that has lifelong premature ejaculation, that just means they've had Prejac since the first time they had penetrative sex. And the thing is, they didn't have Prejac when they were born. So what happened from age 0 to age 17? That's what we're looking at. What impressions did you have placed upon you from conditioning, societal conditioning, early sexual energy conditioning experiences? What happened in the family? What was your first experience like with a partner? How much importance were you placing on it? Were you made fun of? Was there a judgment? Was there a lot of shame or fear, guilt attached to it? We need to look earlier in for someone like that. That's not for every single person, but we're starting to excavate a little bit more inside the self. What are the habit patterns that are stuck in there? And how can we recognize them? And that could be a set of emotions, personality tendencies. It can be psychological conflicts, even that are like really pressing on the nervous system, relationship dynamics. Sometimes people are getting ED because they don't really love the person that they're with, and their penis is trying to talk for them. We
Yeah.
have different things and different reasons why it can be happening. So it's not necessarily that you have to know like the exact moment your issue started, or this is my root cause. I'm 100% sure. Well, you're not really going to be 100% sure, but you're starting to connect. The thing is, these are physical issues, but their cause is not physical. These are physical issues. Their cause is something deeper than that: mental, emotional, stored trauma, tension in the body, energy patterns that are stuck. We want to start looking at those, letting them go. And as you're doing the things that are like, let's be more relaxed, let's stop reacting so much, let's start changing our expression with sex. You kind of do this, both of them at the same time, and people see really good results.
Yeah, I like that. I really like that approach of looking back at the themes, right, of the programs the person learned and emotional tendencies and personality tendencies, but also, yeah, working in the present as well. Um, what do you see with people? How, you work mostly with men, is that right? With these
I
issues,
work
or
mostly with men right now. I have some female clients, but most have been men to this point.
mostly men? Okay, great. And what sort of timeline does it really take to, like, let's say, do some of that retraining of that system, some of the practices that you give them to do, and what has been
Yeah.
your sort of observation?
We get these questions a lot, Jim, don't we?
I'm asking one of them as well. I know for the audience, probably.
For sure. Yeah, so it's very individual, but roughly speaking, I'm seeing like 3 months to 6 to 9 to 12,
Yeah.
something like 3 months to a year, 6 months. It kind of depends on where someone was at before they even started working with me, or how willing they are to let go of their beliefs, how willing they are to jump into the deep end, right? Um, it's individual, but that retraining though of going from, man, it's Friday night and I feel alone and I just grab my phone and start watching porn and jacking off, to wow, I don't even do that anymore. I haven't watched porn in a while. I have no interest in it because I want to have real sexual experiences. My body is able to last longer, even, and I don't have to always ejaculate whenever I do experience pleasure. Um, I'm feeling just more relaxed in general, less anxiety in my day to day. I see these turnarounds often. Yeah, that's more of like a 3 to 6 month period, though, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And I imagine it might be foreign for a male to do this, right? Where you think about, okay, I'm not going to ejaculate at times, right? There's such a just a reflex that we do that has to happen every time, right? So that might be, is that something you see with people at first? They think, wow, I don't need to actually ejaculate. I can stimulate or have pleasure for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then stop, right? But Yeah, is that something that people find? How do males find that at first? Are they surprised by that, or not really?
Yeah, I think they're surprised. It's quite a big, I guess you could call it a habit to break if you want.
Yeah.
And I think it's a little easier when you do it on your own in masturbation first versus with a partner. But then what you practice, you can play with more easily with someone else. So, like in the conscious masturbation practice and in the program, we have tools, also something called the big draw, which it's something that Mantak Chia, who is a sexual energy teacher, talks about. So you can do some things with the big draw, which is kind of like squeezing the muscles, lifting, pushing the sexual energy up into the brain and then dispersing it through the body so that it doesn't just stay right there in the genitals and give you blue balls and feel really uncomfortable and make you want to ejaculate. So there are like a couple of different physical practices you can do to reorient that energy. And it's also important though that you are utilizing your sexual energy. The sexual energy is a creative energy, right? It's in that first energy center of the body, the root chakra. This is the energy of creation. You can literally make a baby with it. So you can make other things too, right? Um, if someone is all work and no play, if they have no creative, joyful, just for the hell of it pursuits, I think they're also going to have more trouble with this. So if you're taking up a new hobby, maybe playing with music, playing with art a little bit, some creativity, you're actually also going to redirect that some, and it'll be used through you versus just like, oh, I need to like get my work done and go to sleep every day and get my work done. Like we need to have more balance in that way too. I think I found is important.
And do you find, I know there's a lot of talk in the community about, non-ejaculation and, using that energy, like you said, for other things, outlets. What have you seen personally, in other people? Do you find that's true that, yeah, that energy can be used and you feel different versus like somebody who's, constantly ejaculating?
I noticed like with myself some difference. It's not tremendous. Some people are like, "Oh my gosh, you're so magnetic and everything happens for you." I don't necessarily see a tremendous difference, but there are times like which just an example when I was writing the first draft of my book, right? I like chose specifically to not ejaculate the whole period, which that was like a 10-day, like I was focused just on that. But I'll be like aware of that sometimes. I do think I have a little more overarching energy flow whenever I'm not ejaculating. But there are other times where I'm like with my partner and we're just together and it's like ejaculating every day for several days in a row. And it's
Mm.
just really joyful, really fun, and it feels right. So, and do I feel terrible and have no creativity on those days? No, sometimes we like think of completely new ideas. I can't say, I think some people get a little extreme about that concept.
Yeah, because you hear a lot about that, and there's different talk with, Mantak Chia, familiar with him, and the sharing of the energy or depleting your energy stores. And I think there is what some studies showing that, your testosterone rises in the first week if you don't, but then after it levels off at some point.
Hmm.
So yeah, it is very interesting. I just was curious about your personal. I've done a little bit of that work before too, where the holding off and just seeing how the energy flows and do you have more energy? And I do notice like a bit of a more energy, and then it sort of seems to kind of level off at some point.
No, exactly. I seem, yeah, it's very similar. I like that testosterone fact that you just shared. And it feels more natural for me to ejaculate, like in somewhat of a regular cadence, because I've gone several months without it, and it actually didn't feel as normal or as natural for the body as when you are like every week or every couple of weeks or whatever it is for someone. Yeah, some people are like really extreme about it. Montauk Chia is like, don't ejaculate maybe once a year on Christmas.
Yeah, you're
It
losing your
just,
vital energy, and right, that was always the theory, right? You're losing vital energy,
yeah.
that you can't get back. But I'm not sure that's true. I mean, like you said, personally, my personal experience too. There's a at some point it doesn't seem to change that much the longer you go. In fact, it might become more. You find it becomes more uncomfortable, possibly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think just creating more balance in our balance is always the answer. Anytime I see someone go like, you should go a really long time or like push yourself and force it. because I've done that before too, actually. My personality was a little bit more like disciplined. I'll do whatever it takes to get something done. And
Yeah.
I've had to break that through suffering. And now whenever I see the extremism, I'm like, it's always the middle path.
It's
Like the
always a
middle
middle
path.
path, the balance. I totally agree. The balance. Yeah, that's interesting. So people that work with you that they're getting results, like I know on your website, and I think maybe share with the audience. I think you did some like data on you kept some tracked some data right on some of your results, which I find awesome that you're were able to do that. Like it sounds like you're getting really good results with people.
Yeah, we have some on our website. If someone wants to look at the actual numbers, and we do collect data though on when people join halfway in, also when they complete the program, and we have some follow-ups. We want to see if it's also sticking and lasting even when they stop working with me. But yeah, that's really encouraging to see the numbers behind it. Behind, I think it's like 75% at least double their time to ejaculate, their ejaculatory reflex time just in the 8 week period. Because I do an 8 week focused period for Vigor, the sexual program. And I do that on purpose. I know people might be like, well, why do you put a time limit to it? It's not really a time limit. It's just go ahead and like for the next 8 weeks, choose to change and do something different. It's not extreme. We're talking like 30, 40 minutes a day, being aware of new information, but you made a choice. You made a choice to be different and to let go of the past self. And if you do that for 8 weeks and you have a coach and someone who's watching over you and helping you,
Yeah.
you can get a really big outcome from that. And
Yeah.
I do 12 weeks for my other program. And again, people what happens is they get the program, but then they get 6 months of coaching support with it. So I'm there for them even. They have more time. They have more time.
Yeah. That's great. So a lot of your work is through these programs, right? Coaching programs. A lot of information is given to them. Some of the stuff you talked about, you're there to help coach them. You do some individual assessments as well.
Yeah, I do some one-on-one assessments if someone wants to book one. Not everyone does that before they even start working with me, but sometimes they do. Um, but yeah, the program it's pre-made, so it walks you through week by week by week what to focus on. And there are also a lot of practices in terms of like meditations, breath work, conscious masturbation practices, etc. I love tools personally because someone will talk to me. I remember being like, okay, I need to release repressed emotions. I need to reveal these root causes. I need but how do I do that? I don't understand. Like, do I work with a therapist? Is it a certain thing? And personally, I love tools, so that's why I make them. I know that it helps some people to be like, okay, look, there are 30 different choices. There are some 5 minute meditations, there's an hour-long meditation, and I make a lot of different practices for this purpose. And actually, this morning I was watching your somatic tracking practice, which is really good. It's really good. So I think that's a cool tool that you made for your community. And it's tools like that that let people I just like pressing play and trusting and following along and setting this thinking, distinguishing mind to the side. Just let me have the experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's powerful, right? And I like the way you laid it out. People can pick and choose and find what works for them. But if they're committed to it, I think like that having that 8 weeks or 12 weeks, like the commitment to stay with it, because there is neuroplasticity, right? There is change that people are creating. And it does take you have to do something, right? To cause that shift. So I like that. And like you said, the people are devoted. Have you noticed a difference in what you kind of put in is what you get out of it in a sense, or people?
Yeah, so you have the very type T people, right? Who type T stands for type tension, and most of my clients are type T. But their default setting is give me the checklist, I will get it all done for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's actually for yourself. I will get it all done for me. I will fix this problem. I'm dedicated, I'm committed, I'm consistent, I'm responsible. And those are beautiful qualities. But if they're taken to an extreme, there's a lot of pressure around that. And there's also this fictitious element, this illusory thought of there's something wrong with me that I have to fix. Actually, there's nothing wrong with you. You don't have to fix anything. So stop trying to fix something that's not broken. enjoy your life. Like I have a checklist in a way, and each day it says joyful activity. Literally experience joy because that's one of the most healing things you can do.
Yes.
And so it's kind of like breaking this pattern of thinking you have to be perfect about showing up and doing your practices a certain way. And that's something that I like to help people to break away from.
That's a great point. Because like we have, like you said, you have all these different practices, but at the same time, it's not about checking them off the list. It's yes, you're going to do them, but how you're doing them, right? How you're operating, the way you approach them. It is more about relaxation, joy. Your whole nervous system relaxes, right? And so everything's going to function better in your body, whether it be your sexual system or any of your systems, or I see all the other systems that people have issues with. So it's like we talked off air, it's all the same, but what you're focusing on is an area that I think needs a lot of attention. That's why I wanted to bring you on. It's an area that's not talked about a lot, I think. And maybe talk a little bit about that, about people feeling maybe ashamed about this, like you mentioned earlier, or feeling they don't want to talk about this. Do you see that a lot in people? They're real tentative or shy at first.
I see it in most people around me in my life. I mean, just talking to anyone about the type of work that I do, they're like, "Oh, that's really good that you do that." And in their mind, they're like, "Yeah, I would never tell people about what I go through sexually." Um, so there it is right there. Even in the mind-body healing community, I've had some interviews with people and they were kind of sheepish, like they didn't really want to talk about this.
Yeah.
And what is it? Is it those individuals? No. It's our culture, it's our society, it's the programming, the belief systems that we have been brought into. We've been brought into a world in which it's been dangerous for men to embrace their sexuality because the over embrace of the sexuality was turned into a violent, oppressive act for so long
Yeah.
towards women. And you were seen as very, very dangerous. It was something that it was hard to talk about in an open, compassionate, communicative way. So I think times are changing and they are making it to where we can be more real about what is. And just because honestly, I remember as a kid talking about sex out loud would immediately get you scolded. Like, what are you doing? You sound like a pervert. Like, there's so much fear around it, so much fear and perception of sex is bad. That's just to be kept between one person and another. Yet this same person is like watching porn every day or two. Like, it's so weird. It's
Yeah.
absolute insanity.
It is strange. I mean, I grew up in a very Catholic environment too. So the Catholic guilt, and my parents definitely did not talk about sex at all. I ended up going to all boys high school, and I felt like it was just kind of ignored in a way, kind of pushed aside between the going to church and going through school. And so it was like kind of left on my own to figure it out. And in a way, it's not talked about. It's like, and you feel sheepish or shy to talk about it, or embarrassed to talk about it. So I think it is great we're talking about it today to try to raise awareness of it.
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah, I was raised Catholic as well. And it was funny, just anytime the word sex was said on a TV show or a movie, it's just like
Yeah.
cringe. Like it was awkward. Yet there's such a fascination or a natural innate interest or pull towards it as a human being. Like
Yeah.
it's natural for us to want to connect and have this intimate encounter. And it's such a beautiful experience. It's been misperceived, I think. So it's just making it more normalized. Like it's okay for us to talk about this. It's okay to talk about this without seeming perverted or violent or oppressive or anything like that. I'm not trying to get anything out of it. I think a lot of it is switching from the energy of lust to the energy of love.
Yeah.
It's really it.
It's a great way to put it. Yeah. Because that shifts your whole, that's like a deeper shift, right? I imagine into how you're going to approach this, right? That lust, I'm going to go and then when I need to release this, and versus moving towards love. Yeah. It's an experience, right? And the ejaculation might be the icing on top or something like that, or cherry on top, but to kind of look past that outcome, right? Like we say, outcome independence, right, with our work here. But yeah, it's
Exactly.
fascinating. It's a fascinating.
Outcome independence with a CUM though.
Yeah, right. Okay. I like that. There we go. That sounds awesome. That's cool. So people like, yeah, and people who can open up about it, I imagine just like you're here to help these people and maybe they're shy and that maybe them and just expressing this and being able to like share that because it is such an intimate personal thing. You know, imagine if people don't want to share that with their friends. They don't want to share that with anybody else. They're holding it so much inside.
It's such an important part of all of this, actually. Think about having a secret in your closet, and there's a part of you that's a bodyguard. It's always there, always watching, making sure no one knows, making sure no one sees, on guard. It's literally a part of you, though. It's in your closet. It just is in your house. It's okay. Everyone has a house, everyone has a closet.
Yeah.
And this pressure, this constriction absolutely affects the physical body as well. So like I have people that are dealing with Prejac and they're making their moves and they're following the program and they're being a little bit more fearless. They're like, yeah, I actually went dancing or I went and cold approached a few girls and just told them that they were pretty today and stuff like that. I'm like, that's so good. Release the energy, be free, just be yourself. I'm like, you know what? If you really want to be free of this, like today, let's do an interview and talk about your Prejac on the internet. And let's release your video today. You'll be free of it because you're no longer guarding a fear that's illusory. You're like,
Yeah.
I'm not ready for that yet. But the
Yeah.
thing is, if you are ready for that, you can see how it's no longer an issue. There's no importance, there's no worry, there's no fear. Does that translate to your body reacting differently? It actually does.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like the same. I'm thinking of the people I see when we can face that fear, we can get through that anxiety, whatever it is we're anxious about. Surely that drops off. Surely there's a difference around whatever that might be, whether it be ejaculation or walking or confronting something the person doesn't want to face, a person, whatever it might be, but we're avoiding, right?
Oh, totally. And when it comes to these sexual things, let's say, especially if someone's dating or they're not in a relationship, they feel like it's such a handicap and like such a secret, oh man, I do not want this person to find out. What if we're intimate? What if it happens? And it creates a huge amount of anxiety. And the pressure that was already there is now compounded even more. Um, versus like, look, even if it's something that's on your mind, talking to the person because you like them and it's feeling great and you're just connecting well, like, hey, I'm gonna be honest with you, like you're so beautiful and I'd love to make love with you. But like I just have this fear right now. It sounds silly, but I'm just worried that even doing that is a big step.
Yeah.
Even doing that is really big because if you hold it in, it's like, I need to uphold my ego's image of a strong, powerful, capable man who can do it all and give you exactly what you want whenever you need it. That puts a ton of pressure on you.
Yeah.
And it's not realistic anyway, always.
No, it's
So
not.
being open and vulnerable and right there in the moment with whatever is happening, whether it's that or financial troubles or any, like literally whatever's happening in your life, this is always going to take pressure off and bring you to a more natural state.
Yeah, that makes such sense. But I imagine, like you said, it's such vulnerability and it's such a person must be super scared to do that because of the rejection, right? What have you found of people that have done that? Have they found that, yeah, it did work out better? It did, was successful for them to be able to speak that truth.
It absolutely does help.
Yeah.
So like if I'm working with a client and they're going through my program and they have the opportunity to tell something to their wife that they've been afraid to, or yeah, go on a date as an example, now's the time. Now's the opportunity. They made the choice. They made the choice to change. They want to have a different outcome, a different result, a different life experience. Not everyone's there. Some people are just watching YouTube videos. They're just kind of like, I don't know, like I'm just trying to figure this out. The suffering hasn't gotten great enough yet, sadly. So like when the suffering is great enough, they choose to change. And then they're like, F it. I'm actually going to do this. I'm just going to say this thing out loud. I found that when people are on their knees in pain, whether it's physical pain or emotional pain or whatever it is in their mind, they're more likely to try something, to do something. And that's good. I mean, that's people are more likely to do it though in those cases.
I 100% agree. When you're forced to change or you feel like you hit a bottom or you just, that's when people say, like you said, F it, I'm going to try it. I'm going to go for it. What do I have to lose? I'm just suffering so badly. The suffering pushes them to the point of change. And I mean, I think that's human nature, isn't it? That we don't change until we are forced to or feel like we have to. But yeah, when people are in that position, I go, good, you're in the right place now. When you're, I don't want you to suffer, but I know you're closer to a change when you're in that position.
Yeah, exactly. I was curious, Jim, though, have you ever dealt with any of these sexual issues just to kind of chat about it and see if any personal
Yeah,
experience?
and we were talking off air about that a little bit. Yeah, I've actually have, and as we're talking, thinking about times of stress or, like I said, going through my upbringing the way I had it was not a lot of exposure to that. And even through high school, being in an all boys school, you know, just being kind of isolated, so not having a lot of opportunity to interact with women at the time. So I became very shy, and that I think it did have an impact on me. It became self-conscious and worried, and that did have an impact. And I didn't really think I noticed it right away, but in certain situations or certain relationships or encounters, when I felt less secure, less confident, that's when I could notice that be like that would come out more through, sexually. So certainly, yeah. And I actually know, like you, did some work on it too. When I was in Australia for a while, I was working with energy work, and that's when I got into more of a bit of the tantra and understanding some of that. So similar to some of the practices you teach, I started doing some of that and thought, wow, this is really interesting, and that really helped me a lot to just understand that, and also to go deeper into looking at, like you said, more of the root stuff. As I started doing more of my work I do now, the emotional work, I started to explore that as well, that was a component. So, but certainly, yeah, I've had that at different times, and I can see how, personally, how it can snowball potentially if you're not careful into something that's in your head now, and it just could get worse and worse in somebody.
Definitely, definitely. Non-reaction is easier said than done, but it's one of the first things that I work with people on. I think it's in week one of the Vigor program because I'm like, look, maybe you're with a partner right now, you're still having these sexual issues right now, even as you're going through the program right early on. Let's take reacting off the table because it's so, I mean, I did this so many times. If I came faster than I wanted to, I would just self-flagellation. It was just, so upset, so feeling ashamed, feeling less than. It was this emotional response that seemed to what I thought, or was going to encourage me to change, encourage me to fix it, encourage me to like try harder next time, do more tantric practices, read more Montauk Chia books, etc. And so the non-reaction, the way it looks is, let's say you ejaculate and it's maybe faster than you would have liked. You're going to have a lot of thoughts come in. You might even have that familiar feeling of anger or shame or whatever it is. Maybe your partner is there with you, or maybe they're like upset too. You never can tell what's going on. People have different situations with this. There's going to be a pull for you to react to that. There's going to, just like with pain, right, Jim? Just like with when people have back pain, there's going to be a pull to sit a certain way so that you don't make it worse, or take a pain pill, or do something about it, react to it. So it's very similar with sexual issues. Notice the mind is giving you all this noise, all these thoughts, all these stories, and it's just past patterns on repeat, coming up again, coming up again. It doesn't mean they're true. It's just coming in. And if you can sit there, maybe you're lying down on the bed or like go into another room. I think if you're with a partner, it helps to go into another place and just take a moment alone and sit down and just like watch the writing on the wall. Like just let it be there. Like, you know what? I'm just gonna sit here. And I even have a meditation. It's called the non-reaction one. You could even turn it on and just like do it for 5 minutes. But
Mm,
what's happening is that you're going into equanimity. You're going into a neutral state of being the awareness. I'm aware of what's coming in, the thoughts, the emotions that I feel, the sensations in my body. And I'm just going to let them be there. It's okay. It's all right. I'm just going to let them be there. I'm not even going to try to fix it. I'm not even going to try to push them away. I'm just going to let them be there.
yeah.
And they have way less energy. And when you don't react to them, that spin cycle that you've been stuck on starts to really slow down, just like it does with chronic pain symptoms. It's the same thing.
Same thing. Yeah, I love it. I love non-reaction. I'm a big fan of that word, non-reaction, and also non-resistance. Those two things kind of go hand in hand. But yeah, that's fantastic. Get in equanimity, right? To get into awareness. Just the awareness alone, the observation of it in that state is an opening for it to just be felt or for it to go. Because we, like you said, we feel like we've got to fix it, we've got to do something, we've got to move, we got to shift, or yeah. So you're basically, I imagine, with non-reaction, the way I see it is you're having to deal with what's here. You're facing your feelings. You're sitting in this, but you're also building a strength, right? You're building an ability to have resiliency and to cope, I think, with what you're dealing with. And it's sort of healing it in a way, isn't it? Those things can pass now on their own.
Yeah, there's a deeper compassion actually that's connected to that non-reaction. It's like I love myself always. I love myself whether this seemed to have gone well or not. It's going to be okay. This just is right now. And so that's really, really big. And someone might be like, well, I don't really know if I can do that. You actually can cultivate that non-reaction. Like you said, it is something you get better at over time, and it benefits you everywhere in your life.
Yeah,
I
totally
have a
agree.
Oh yeah, I have a few 1 hour meditations on my YouTube channel. And one of them, I'm pretty much guide you to just sit still and just be with what is for an hour straight. It's very simple. I have
Yeah,
a couple of words though that come in here and there, so it's not just pure silence. Someone did it and left a comment yesterday, and they're like so incredible, and they were crying and they like felt energy. And if you've never done that before, like just sat for 1 hour, not moving or doing anything,
yes.
that'll teach you equanimity. You'll see what I'm talking about. You'll also be amazed. You'll be amazed at what happens too. You'll have like a lot of pain and like thoughts, and they're so annoying. And then later on, there's like this rush of energy moving through your body and tingling, and then at the end, you like feel way better than when you started most of the time. Not always, but
Yeah,
it's pretty
it's
cool.
amazing to like you said. I've done that so many times. Just not move an inch, not move, just get still and just observe the inside, right? Because all the movement we have is coming from our brain creating some disruption, some type of agitation or irritation, and we have to move. But if you sit through it, it sort of combusts on the inside instead of having to express it outward. That's the reaction. But when you don't react to it, non-reaction, it goes on its own and it shifts, right? It's like an internal shifting, and you can see it, and it's super powerful. But it takes a bit of practice. But that's awesome that you have that meditation on there.
Yeah, no, exactly like you said. There's a transmutation, there's a purification. It all happens on its own.
Yeah,
And it's really wonderful. It's really wonderful. It's a lot of people don't realize it when they're meditating. If you're in this type of natural meditation where you're not really doing anything, small movements of the body even are habit patterns because the body is moving via the mind. It's just
yeah,
another layer of mind. And there's essentially a movement because there's an unsatisfactoriness recognized in the moment. Who is recognizing the unsatisfactoriness? That's a whole nother conversation, right,
yeah.
Jim? But um, yeah, so non-reaction is something that's good to cultivate. It's not as hard as it may sound. I think it may sound like you got to be a monk and they've been meditating for years. No, not really. You just need to have a few experiences with it. Like, whoa, I can actually be right here while it's pouring down rain on me and not move a muscle, and I didn't die. It's pretty much like that.
Yeah, and I don't know your experience with it, but mine is that there's a level of stillness that starts to build in your system, like a more quietness that comes in. Obviously, the less you react. And exactly like you said, it's your mind that creates this in your body. It causes the movement in your body. But yeah, when you can sit through it, or like a wave, I think of emotions or energy as waves. So some people, I'm like, just hang in there, breathe through it, like it's going to pass. And sure enough, it does if they can stay with it. But we're such instinctually think that we can't take it anymore. We got to move, we got to do something. And like you said, non-doing, non-reaction, it goes on its own if we allow it. So it's super powerful. I 100% agree with you on this.
Yeah, I say that the dust is settling. So like when you start out in a meditation, for example, there's a lot of dust that's been kicked up throughout the day that the mind has been doing. And you're not going to kick up any more dust. So after a while, it starts to settle, starts to settle, starts to settle. And then, yeah, there's a stillness there. It's quite powerful.
Yeah,
So
it's great, powerful. Well, this is great stuff. I know we could talk probably for another hour easily. So maybe another time. But I really appreciate you coming on and sharing this information. I think it's needs to get out there more. I think we need to speak about this, and people are dealing with these issues and they know they can find help. And I'm glad you're specializing in this and offering this and helping a lot of people. So I'll put your information on the channel so people can reach out to you if they're interested or need help. And I really, really thank you for coming on.
thank you, Jim. Yeah, it's amazing to do this work because sexual connection is beautiful. It's great to be able to experience being a human being. And I lived many years where I really wasn't able to do things that a human being can typically do, like exercise or sit down without pain or eat certain foods or have sex or urinate normally. And these are things that I took for granted when I was younger. Um, so yeah, I know that there are people who are really locked up, imprisoned almost in their own bodies by this ejaculatory reflex that may happen so fast and they never even really get to experience good, like an actual sexual experience with their partner. Or ED, like you can't even make it to the party anyway. So I know some people might be like, well, that's not severe pain. This isn't as hard. People have lots of different types of challenges and experiences, and it's really awesome to get to see someone go from being debilitated to being alive again and getting to be a human being all the way. So I'm honored to get to do it. And yeah, thank you, Jem. I look forward to chatting more in the future and yeah, helping anyone I can.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. And we'll talk to you down the road.